So in this video, we're going to connect our website to the database. In this case, we're going to connect to a MySQL database or a MariaDB database. And we're going to open up, or we're going to make the database in PHP Myadmin, and we're going to make a table. And we'll fill it with some dummy data to test with. And we'll run a quick select statement and display it in the console in the console. By that I mean we'll display it down here just to prove that we've actually connected to the database and that everything is working as it should. And then in the following videos, we're going to actually display those comments with Ajax in the front part of the website, which is right here. We'll actually start displaying them here. But in this video, we'll just connect to the database and make sure that's all working fine. So to get started, we're going to need to install MariaDB or MySQL, a MySQL database, and I'm using XAMPP. So you can see here there's MySQL and Apache. So if you don't have XAMPP, you can just install this, and you can also use WAMP or MAMP if you have a Windows or a, Mac computer. But XAMPP is cross-platform, so if you don't have this, in order to install it, you can just type in XAMPP into Google, and here it is. And then you can install whichever one for your operating system. Once it's installed, you can go to the folder that you have wherever you've installed it to. To open up this little control panel, I'll just close this. You can scroll down and you just hit the XAMPP control.exe, and that'll open it up. And this is where we will start the MySQL database, and we'll start Apache to use my PHP Myadmin. Now, maybe some of you are familiar with XAMPP or WAMP. This is a sort of Apache server. In htdocs, you can put this is where you would put, websites that you want to run off the server. Now, we are using the NodeJS server to run our website, so we don't have to put our website, our code into an htdocs, or if you're using WAMP, the www folder, we won't have to do that because we're already using Node.js as a server. But if you, so the reason we're using XAMPP is to just run the database, essentially. So that's what we're going to be doing in this video. So we'll start by opening up PHP Myadmin, and to do that, you can just type in http:// and we'll type in localhost /php myadmin /, and there we go. So now we've opened up PHP Myadmin, and this is sort of the where you can manage all your databases and stuff through the server. And actually, it looks like maybe it is actually a MariaDB database, but that's I'm pretty sure they're pretty much the same thing. I think this is just the truly open source version, and then MySQL is still open source. I think it was. Anyway, they're open source, so we're going to be using that. And again, you can see the 127.0.0.1, which we are running off localhost here. And as you see, we typed that in there. We've been talking about that. So essentially, to begin, what we can do here is we can create a new database by just clicking up here and clicking new. And we're going to call this database, we can call it just test. Well, we can call it, actually, what we'll call it is comments. We'll call this database comments. And yep, that should be fine. So we'll hit create. And then you can see it just populates right here on the left side. And we're going to want to create one table. And we can call this table, we'll call it comments, because this table will hold the comments. So I'll hit go. And now we're going to create the columns of this table. So we can have, for example, in our first one, we can have let's say we have, well, we want a comment ID probably. So what we can just call it ID, and we'll keep it as an int. We can say number. the length of this integer, we can say 11. And if we scroll to the right, we'll make it auto-incrementing, so we don't have to worry about that. And it asks us if we want it to be the primary key. Yes, we can do that. That'll just make sure each of these comments has a unique ID associated with it, and it'll auto-increment them so we don't have to manually put those in ourselves. And that should be fine. So the next one here, we have the ID for the comment. We have a username and the actual text comment. So this is what people will be typing in. So we can add in here, perhaps the username then. Yeah, I'm going to use camel case. And we'll make this a variable character, and we can make this length 55, let's say. And that should be good. And then we'll have the actual comment. So we'll call this one, we can call this one comment, because this is where the actual comment is going to go. Again, we can use a variable character size, or we could use text. Let's use variable character, because let's limit it to, let's say, like 300 characters or so. Should be fine. And the last thing we want to do is the date, right? So we still need to include the date. So we will put in date, and we'll make this a date type. I guess we could also have used text, really. Yeah, why don't we use text? We'll use text here. We can use a date type, and that will be that. So then essentially we're just going to save. And there we go. We've created our table in our database. So this is our one table. You can see in our comments database, we have one table called comments. And you can see that our ID is the auto-incrementing primary key. It's primary key because you can see the key. We have a username column, a comment, and date. So let's put some data into here. And we're going to do that through PHP Myadmin. Of course, in future videos, we're going to actually put comments in through this system. But as of right now, just to test, we will put it in through PHP Myadmin. So we don't need to put an ID in because we set it to auto-incrementing. And so for the username, we can say test user _1. And this is a test comment for user 1. And we can choose today's date, and let's put in another one. Again, we don't have to put in a user ID. Let's say, let's keep this consistent here. So test user _2. This is a test comment for user 2. Great. And then the date, we can put, let's do a different date. There we go. So we can hit go, and that's going to insert 2 rows. So now if we browse this table, we can see that our database with the comments table, we've inserted some rows. So these are those 4 columns that we had made. And we have one row with the user ID 1 and 2, which was auto-incremented. And the usernames are test user 1 and test user 2. And we sort of imported those. So essentially now what we want to do is using our NodeJS, our server, we're going to pull this data and display it into the console. So before we can do that, though, we need to actually connect to the database. So in order to connect to the database, we're going to have to do use Node Package Manager to install another package called MySQL. And that's going to allow us to essentially connect to the database. So down in the console, we can go npm Node Package Manager, and we're going to install MySQL. And we'll hit enter. And we will just let that install. And how we're actually going to set this up, so there we go. We've installed MySQL. So we could put all of the code connected to the database, up in the top here, sort of. But it's maybe a better practice to keep things a little more modular, keep it a little cleaner. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own module, and we will require it onto the server page and use that to connect to the database. So to do that, we're going to create a new file, and we can call this, I'm going to call it db connection. because it's going to be the file that connects to the database. And inside here, we're going to create a new constant called MySQL. And we will require the package that we just installed, which is MySQL. And then it's very easy to connect to the database. We're going to create a function, which we'll call on the other page. And we'll call it getConnection, because we want to connect. And let's do that. And then we will make a connection variable and make that equal to MySQL dot, and we'll call the method createConnection. And then we'll just pass in the details that we need. So just like that. And so our host in this case for the connection is going to be localhost, which is the local machine, our local computer. And then our user, we're just going to use the default one, which is root. And that needs to be in quotations. And the password by default is just empty, so an empty string. And then the database that we want to actually connect to. So that is going to be, let's take a look here. We made comments, that's right. So we're going to connect to comments. And that's it. That's going to create our connection variable. And then in this function, we're going to want to return this variable. When we call this function, we're going to want to return connection. And that's essentially it. So we're going to, so basically just to go over what we just did, we're making a function called getConnection. When we call this function, we're going to create a variable called con, short for connection, and call the MySQL createConnection to essentially this machine, connect with this username and password, and please connect to this database. And luckily I'm going over this because I realized I spelled database wrong, forgot the A. So there it is. And then finally, once this connection is created, we're going to return that variable, and then we can call the other methods that we need to with this variable. So down here, we're going to make this into a module by calling module.exports. And then what we want to export. So, well, this is going to be the name that we're going to have on the other side. We'll call it, I'm just going to call it the same thing, getConnection. And we're going to set it equal to the function that we're calling, which in our case is this connection. So basically, we're calling this module getConnection, and it's going to have this function inside of it. So we're going to put connection in it, getConnection, I mean. And that's it. So we're going to save this page. And then over on the server side, what we can do is now call that connection without having to have all that code at the very top. So in order to do that, we'll just require, instead of requiring one of the modules that we imported with Node Package Manager, we're going to require our own module that we just made. So to do that, we'll create a constant, and we'll call it con, short for connection. And then we'll set that equal to require. And we're going to require our own module. So again, to refer to things within our own file structure, it's dot and then slash and db connection. And there it is. So now we've required that. And what we can do then, so just to test this, we're going to call this method within our, when we call the home page. So right after we've basically sent the index.html in the response, we're going to run a query with our connection now. So in order to do this, we're going to make a variable called con, and again, short for connection, because what we're going to do is we're going to take that connection to the database that we have, and we're actually going to call the method that we just created, right? getConnection. So what just happened here is we're going to call, so basically we're requiring con, right, which we had, so this is a constant con, and we're requiring this file that we have made. Okay, so then what we're doing is, okay, we've required that, and we're going to call the function that is within this module that we created, which is getConnection. Now getConnection returns a connection. So we're going to return con into a new variable called conn. So that's because this function returns a value, we'll return that value into this variable. Now, since we have that variable, what we can do is we can call con and we'll query the database. So con.query. And we will just do a little simple SQL statement here. So select star from comments. I believe that's what this table is called. Select star from comments. And then what we could do is .comments, because basically we're doing the database dot the table that we want to call from. So basically select star from comments. And how this function works is after we've done that, function, and we'll have error, results, and fields. So, okay. Yes, that is correct. And we'll just hit enter there. Okay, so the results is essentially an array of rows. So this results field will carry an array of these rows. So this row and this row. So what we can do to access those results is first we can check if we throw an error, right? So if an error happens, this is where the error variable will be held. So if error, there's obviously a problem, we can throw error. Otherwise, if there's no error, then we're just going to go ahead and do a for each loop to loop through the array of rows in the results variable here, in the results array. So essentially what we're going to do then is go results dot for each, which is the method, and we can just call comment, which is where each row will be in. And then what we can do is essentially just call the arrow. There it is. Oops, nope. The arrow. And we will do this. And then what we can do is for each comment, right? For each comment, which is for each row in the results array, we want to console.log those results. So we can console.log, and let's start with just console.logging the actual comment. So that's what we'll start with. And then after this is all done, and I'm just going to tab this in so it's a little clearer, we want to close the connection. So we're going to go con.end to close the connection, so other people can access this database. So first we'll just see what this returns. So we'll save that. And then we can actually access each element of the array if we want to. And we'll do that next. But let's see if this works first of all. So to do that, we'll start up our server. Oops, nope. Oh, we don't want to install that again. So we're just going to cancel that by Control-C. And we're going to just call node server.js and start our server up. And then all we have to do is refresh this page. And, oh, okay. Oh, we had an error here. Let's take a look. Okay, so if we just look at this error here, it looks like we rethrow type error. Results.forEach is not a function. So you might have noticed while I was typing, this should not be capitalized. It's a lowercase. So if we save this, and then we rerun the server, we go to Chrome and refresh. There we go. We have it refreshing there. Okay, and then as you can see, it returned. So basically what happened here is first it returned our index.html page, which is this. And after it did that, it went ahead and made a connection and queried our database with this query. At first we threw an error because I misspelt for each. But then We didn't throw any errors because I corrected that spelling mistake. I guess the error actually didn't come from here. It probably came just from here. And without the error, we went through each of the comment rows, or the comment, in this results array and displayed them down here. So you can see ID 1, username is test user 1, the comment is this is a test user, here's the date, and here's the second packet. So that's great. So you can see we've got all this great data, and what we'll eventually do is pass this with JSON to the front end portion, this index page here, and actually display them. But for now, this is great. It shows that we made our connection successfully. And let's say that we just wanted to get this portion of this array. So in order to do that, because this is a JSON object, a JavaScript object notation, we can just access the attributes of these objects. So we can instead of just putting comment, let's put comment dot username. And that should display this portion. So it should display this result, test user 1, and then just test user 2, because we're looping through it. So if we save this, and we Control C to stop running our server, Control C, and start the server up again. If we refresh this page, you'll notice, there we go. So we just got these two portions here. So that's by just using this. So we could make this a little clearer to ourselves by saying, we could write a little message here. The user names are, and concatenate that on with a plus. Resave that. And run the server again and refresh. And there we go. So the usernames are test user 1 and test user 2. We could also grab the comments. If we scroll back up here, we can see that the each index of the array is a JSON object, and we can grab just the comments as well. So we can say the comments are, and then instead of putting username, we can just select comment. And if we Control save that, we'll stop the server and start it up again. We can see here that the comments are now selected from the database. So essentially what we've done is we've successfully connected to the Php Myadmin database with NodeJS, and we're pulling this data with the code onto the server and logging it into the console, just to show that we successfully made the connection. So if you'd like to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. And in the next video, we're going to take this data and actually pass it over to the front end of our website and display it into the actual comment section right here. Thank you so much.